Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for joining us. We have our first guest for Revert to Success. And our first guest is, as he would say himself, he's an conventional character or person, formerly known as Drew Smith. Is now Abdullah Al-Haddad. Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair for joining us, Abdullah.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings and grace of Allah be upon all of you.
Ameen, ameen. Thank you so much for joining us. Drew, tell us a little bit about yourself. Abdullah, a little bit about yourself. If you'd like to share with us a little bit about Satanism itself. You did say that there's a lot of misconceptions about Satanism itself, and it may help with Dawas in regards to understand more about Satanism, that it's not what people perceive it to be or have been told to be. Would you like to explain a bit more about that?
Yeah, first off, a quick, elevator talk about who I am. I am a English teacher here in Xi'an, China, which actually, strangely enough, is the cradle of Islam in China. One of the Sahaba actually traveled to China and introduced Islam here. The oldest and largest masjid in all of China is here. Yeah, I visit there, and the Muslim quarter in Xi'an is gorgeous. I recommend everybody go there. Right now, I'm about halfway through some delicious, wholesome Chinese Muslim food. The main ethnic group here in Xi'an that is Muslim are called the Hui, the Hui, Hui people. Wonderful people. I hold my bachelor's degree and master's degree in history, bachelor's concentrating in the Middle East and Islam, and my master's degree was a joint specialty in Chinese and Soviet history. I went to pursue my PhD at NYU in purely Soviet history. But the American job market in academia is just so atrocious, and eventually even my stipends, scholarships, and grants couldn't cover the exorbitant cost of attending NYU. But alhamdulillah, the Islamic Center of NYU gave me a great experience, really strengthened my iman. I worked with Imam Khalid Latif and Sheikh Suhaib Webb multiple days out of the week. So, I'm a pretty bookish guy, but I am also quite an interesting character. So let's talk a little bit about my past and what Satanism is. So when you think of Satanism, you think of horror movies, you think of, people in black cloaks, and, there's, the virgin sacrifice, the beautiful people, Black Sabbath playing in the background and black candles, and there's a cat being sliced apart. Nothing could be further from the truth. Satanism is actually what is referred to in religious studies. I minored in religious studies during my BA, concentrating in Abrahamic mysticism. So that's why I know a lot about Tasawwuf, Sufism, and Kabbalistic Judaism. The esoteric and mystical part kind of attracted me because I was already involved in the occult. So I had that respect. I had that respect for it. It was the opposing side, but y'all were it was kind of like I saw the Sufis, and I was like, you guys are serving the wrong guy, but y'all are still trying to break on through to the other side, and so I respect that. So Satanism is in what in religious studies is called a new religious movement, or an NRM. It was founded in 1966 in San Francisco by a guy named Anton LaVey. And he wrote the Satanic Bible, and then its supplementary text, the Satanic Rituals, the Satanic Witch, the Devil's Notebook, and Satan Speaks. But the core is the Satanic Bible, which is basically his philosophical treatise about organized religion and the state of the world at the time that he was writing. And basically, Satanism does not worship Satan as a literal, like, Satan, Satan, oh Lord Satan, thank you for death and despair and plagues. No, not at all. To them, Satan is a against conventional society, or the idea that it's a symbol of the primal nature of man that should not be suppressed by religion. Basically, the best way to put it is that I'll put it in a satanic term and Islamic term. LaVey said there is a beast, not exorcised, aka that your nafs is not the enemy. Your nafs is your friend. And Satanists believe that if you are not embracing and feeding your nafs, that you are making yourself unhappy. So they believe in indulgence of the senses. They believe that, in hedonism. It's a very self-centered, it's a selfish religion. It's an individualist religion. And yes, there are ceremonies, there are black masses, where maybe like religious symbols might be desecrated. There might be ritual sex, or getting drunk, yada yada yada. But that's mostly for show, or what is called psychodrama, kind of to almost getting something off your chest. It's like a mental exercise for them, as well as a social gathering. So yes, Satanism barely qualifies as a religion. It's more of atheism with horror movie props. But so you're wondering what got a guy like me into Satanism? Well, I was 14, and I actually grew up in an atheist home, so I was not rebelling against a Christian or Jewish household. It was the early 2000s, and Wicca was all the craze. And so a lot of my friends were getting into Wicca, and there was the whole thing of, but we practice white magic and we don't worship the devil, we worship nature. Well, me, Mr. Contrarian, gotta be shocking and edgy, gotta go against the grain, Mr. Renegade had to go, well, guess what, y'all? I'm a witch too, but I do worship the devil. And So while all of my friends were reading Lady Granola Moonshadow, there I was walking around with the Satanic Bible and, the little pentagram, and it was a rebellion against other New Age and other occult things that were going on among teenagers in the early 2000s. But it actually spoke to me. I came from an abusive home where my father belittled me, and this idea of a egocentric religion where you can stand up for yourself, that you are your own God, you are your own Satan,
Yeah.
and don't take bull hockey from anybody else. That speaks to an abused teenage boy.
Yeah. In a time of rebellion as well, of course. Yes.
Yeah, of course. And so I stuck with it. I stuck with it from 14 to 30 years old. I joined the Church of Satan. Actually paid the $200 to get the membership card. I met LaVey's family. He died in 1997, but I met his grandson and his wife, his daughters, his widow. I was deep into it.
Sorry.
What was that?
And they've obviously followed his way as well, right?
A few of them have dropped off. I would actually say about half of the LaVey family dropped it because they kind of felt like, well, let me put it this way, Nellie. I feel that LaVey started the Church of Satan. He started Satanism as something for fun for himself, and he ended up surrounded by sycophants who took it too seriously. And I think he died a very unhappy man, because it wore on him. I think his own creation ended up breaking him, his grandson is still a Satanist, but one of his daughters is still a Satanist, but his widow, his one of his sons, and one of his daughters are no longer Satanists.
And so do you think that with Satanism and embracing, enoughs, do you think anyone really remains happy in Satanism, or is it just this illusion of being happy to allow all your desires, and is it with allowing any desire to come in, is that everything and anything that anyone desires, they go for it? Is that how it works?
Yes, in terms of anything and anything you want, there are some satanic commandments like don't rape, do not harm children, do not harm animals unless for food or self-defense. Do not give your opinion unless you are warranted, unless it is asked for. There is actually satanic commandments, and honestly, if you read the satanic commandments, there's some good advice to them. And I have met many Satanists who I would say are happy with their lives, but in the same sense that I've met plenty of atheists who are happy with their lives. That being said, there is still a great number of Satanists, like with me during my time. I would say that there were points in my life where I was very happy with my faith, but at the same time, because of the egocentric, the Noth-centered nature of Satanism, the problem with Satanism, I feel the fatal flaw, if you will, idolizing Shaitan aside, I feel like philosophically the fatal flaw, if you will, is that it's very easy for you to start to conflate arrogance and narcissism with self-esteem, and assertiveness with aggression and confrontational behavior. And I and also in the 9 satanic statements of the Satanic Bible, it says Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. Well, here's the problem, and not just Muslims, but anybody can tell you that if you become really into your personal indulgence, it becomes a compulsion.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, think about alcohol, drugs, video games, sex, even food. You might think, oh, this is just my indulgence. This is my guilty pleasure. But then it becomes something that you have to have, otherwise you're unhappy. And then it becomes a compulsion, and then you are a slave to something else. You're no longer in control of yourself like Satanism ostensibly teaches that you are. And that was one of those things that really started wearing on me. I'm looking over my notes, is when I turned 30, I realized I couldn't be the bad boy edgelord forever, and that my personality couldn't continue to revolve around confrontational shock value. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll are fun when you're 21, but when you're 30, it's exhausting. After a while, it's just the same thing over and over again, and party after party, and you feel confused. And then also, not only is it exhausting, but when you're 30 and you're still being that way, you don't look, intriguing or crazy. You look like an immature tryhard.
Basically, it sounds about right.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying. I mean, like, some people can pull it off, like, Ozzy Osbourne, he's still pulling it off, but I mean, Ozzy was never truly a Satanist. He just did the whole shock value. I mean, some people can pull it off for the rest of their lives, but for the most part, after a while, it just gets exhausting, and the people around you are like, dude, I haven't been a Satanist since middle school. Why are you still going on with this?
Yeah.
And, after a while, there was, when I was in my 20s, I'd tell people I was a Satanist, and people would be like, ooh, tell me more. Ooh, that's hot. And then you get to be 30, and people are like, yeah, I was 14 once too.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, that wasn't the main thing. Is you know, it was mainly just the exhaustion and the disillusionment and my personal conflicts with the Church of Satan leadership, and then eventually the split off the Satanic Temple.
Right. Right. 'Cause
Uh,
you became the minister, didn't you? Is that right?
what?
That you became the minister of Church of Satan.
Yeah, yes, I did. Yes, I did. I was never officially put into what is called a priest. There's different levels, but
Okay.
I was a legally ordained minister by American law, and
Wow.
so that allowed me to have the title of minister, but I was not a priest. It's a little convoluted. I
Right.
was a minister in the Satanic Temple, which was an offshoot
Mm.
that I went with in 2011.
Mm.
They've made a lot. You've probably seen them a lot in the news.
Mm. Mm.
You probably see them more in the news than you do the Church of Satan proper these days, which is now a very dwindling group. You got to also remember that Satanism has a very high turnover rate. I think I read something like it has a 80% turnover rate.
Wow. And what does that mean? Is
About
that
like I think turnover rate, as in 80% of Satanists eventually leave Satanism.
Satanism? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. 80%. That's a high number.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
But uh, one thing though is because here's where my connection with Islam begins.
yeah. Tell us about that.
You can thank George W. Bush for this.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
We can thank him for.
so I was and am still very left wing. I still consider myself a socialist, and the Iraq War breaks out, and I am like this. This is an imperialist war for oil. It's a war against Muslims, and I throw myself into the anti-Iraq war movement, and from there I throw myself into the pro-Palestine movement. Now, if you're involved in the anti-Iraq war movement and the pro-Palestine movement, you're bound to meet a lot of Muslims.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And it also it encouraged me I took Arabic and Turkish. I Sufism and Islamic mysticism, life of the Prophet, survey of Quran. I took Middle Eastern history both semesters, and I did a summer study abroad in Turkey in 2006.
Oh.
And this is all when I was still a Satanist.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
So you can see where, even though I was still Satan, you can still see where I developed that respect for Islam.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So it's not so much anti-Islamic or anti-religion, but it is in a way, but it also opens doors to seeing the other side. I think more so than when you are an atheist, because this is how I'm seeing it. I mean, if you are embracing your nafs and things like that, is it, I mean, with the 80% turnover, you're saying, do people go onto religion, or do they just go on just whether it's atheism or just neutral, or is there more Christianity that they turn to?
I've never seen the numbers broken down, but I think most Satanists just turn to plain old vanilla atheism.
Right.
Some go to other occult sects, I've noticed, like Thelema or neo-paganism.
Right.
Very few Satanists convert to Christianity, Judaism, and certainly I only have ever met one other former Satanist who became a Muslim.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I would say the majority just either become vanilla atheists or they become occultists of another milder sort.
Right. Right. Okay. Mm. Mm. Yeah. And so by you studying the Arabic and the Turkish and the Sufism and did you what moved you to revert to Islam?
Well, this is where it gets even crazier.
Oh, really?
So,
Great.
yes. So, as I'm saying, okay, so it's late 2017.
Mm, mm,
And I'm getting heavily disillusioned with Satanism. Like I said, just constantly feeling the need to feed my nafs is getting exhausting.
mm,
Having to constantly put up this edgy bad boy front is exhausting.
mm,
And eventually I felt like I want to seek something bigger than myself. I want something chill, but something where I can still expand myself into something powerful. So I hit the books, you could say.
mm,
I hit the books. I grabbed out all of my religious studies books. I got out all my Sufi texts. I got my Rumi. I got my Al-Azali. I got out my Sahih International and Abdullah Yusuf Ali translations of the Quran, which I had read multiple times. I probably read the Quran like 3 times as a Satanist.
Wow. Wow. And as a Satanist, and you read the
I
Quran,
still
you
misinterpreted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a wrathful God.
right, right. Mm,
And a God of hate, there was this weird thing where I was like, now astaghfirullah, this is me quoting my past self, so don't get offended. I love Muslims, I hate Allah. That's kind of what my policy was.
right, right. Mm,
Yeah, yeah. If I may digress a little, I was the kind of guy who, if I saw right wingers harassing a sister in hijab, I'd come up in like my spikes and my leather jacket, my pentagrams. I'd be like, "Hey, is there a problem? Is there gonna be a problem? Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. You okay, hon? All
wow.
right, okay." Or like, if you saw like those militia types picketing an Islamic center, I'd always be, offering to like escort Muslims to
Uh,
make them feel safe.
yeah.
And if I saw a Muslim feeling unsafe or in an unsafe situation, I was there.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And I love, a brother of mine once said, I don't remember me saying this. He said that when I first met him, he said, why are you here, man?
Uh,
And I said, brother, we're the 2 most hated religions in America. We gotta stick together. Okay, but I digress.
yeah.
So I hit the books, and I especially go back
stopped.
Sufism, why are you, I'm like looking at my stack of books.
You stopped.
Don't look at me that way.
Abdullah. Abdullah.
Yeah.
Sorry, you stopped for a few seconds there.
Okay, so let me backtrack. So there I am with my pile of books, and I'm reading about especially Sufism and Kabbalah. And with Kabbalah, I'm like, well, I'm not ethnically Jewish, so kind of not my lane. Push it aside. I'm sitting there thinking, and I see my Qurans, and I see my tafsirs, and I see my books of Rumi poetry, and I'm like, stop looking at me like that. Stop. I'm watching you because I know you're watching me. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So, over the course, now call me crazy, and if you think that I'm absolutely nuts, that's okay. But you know what? It made me a Muslim. Over the course of 7 nights, I had the same dream where I am in a blank room, sitting at a desk, and there's nothing on the desk. There's nothing on the walls except for in front of me, and on the wall in front of me is just this big bunch of squiggles. And I keep hearing this voice behind me, but there's nobody behind me. And I keep hearing, be who you truly want to be. Be who you really are. Do what you know is going to really make you happy in life. Those were the 3 things this voice kept saying. This happened 7 times, and across each dream, the blob squiggles slowly morphed into Arabic calligraphy. And by the 7th dream, the squiggles were the takbir, Allah Akbar. And I woke up, and that's when I looked up and just went, okay, I get it. I just yelled at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and was like, I get it. Okay, fine. I get it. Wow. Yes. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yes, I've wanted to follow you all this time. It's just been a matter of pride. So, I get up. Yeah. I get a shower. I sit, I go into my living room, I sit down, and I think for a second. And that's when I grab my phone, and I call up a couple of Muslim friends, and they're like, hey, Drew, how's it going? Like, you okay? It's like 9:30 in the morning, and I'm like, guys, I'll explain later, but are you, and each one, are you free at the moment? Because we need to get to we need to get to the masjid. We need to get to the masjid right now. This is not a drill. Drew is taking his shahada. And they were like, whoa. And then I was like, guys, no time to explain. Get in the car.
Wow.
And I actually didn't take I actually ended up not taking my shahada in a masjid. It was at a friend's house, and an imam who I had actually met before. He and I knew each other by face, and he was like, "You're Drew, right?" And I was like, "Yes, you're, Imam." And he was like, I was like, Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Alaikum assalam rahmatullah. He said, yeah, I remember you, from like a palette, a few Palestine protests. And I said, yeah, brother, I want to become a Muslim. And it was one of those things where he was like, okay, repeat after me. And I go, hang on, brother. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu Muhammadur Rasulullah. And he was like, I didn't even have to go. Usually when a revert takes their shahada, you're at the masjid and it's like, repeat after me. Ashhadu, ashhadu, ashhadu. Like, just, now that was rude. Astaghfirullah, and for apologies to the imam, but I was like, we cool, man. I know how to say this. And I, and we all went out for Turkish food and had a great time. And then I went home and I just bawled my eyes out. I was just, finally.
Wow. Subhanallah.
It was just like the weight. I'm sure you've heard this from other reverts, and maybe just that weight just lifted off you.
Yeah.
And then I started going and selling my satanic stuff on eBay. It was like, all right, let's go on eBay. Let's make a quick buck off some metalheads.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I've got a kufi and a thobe, and I pull out my old kafia from my Palestine protests, and I'm like, hey, could everybody start calling me Abdullah Al-Haddad? And I start growing my beard out.
Yes.
And I start hopping from masjid to masjid, end up moving to New York, getting highly involved in the Muslim community in New York, which was amazing. And it's almost 3 years later, and I am here in China, and I am living my best life, subhanAllah. It is amazing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do for you. And I mean, what else can I say? I went from this to this.
SubhanAllah. Allah's the turner of hearts. Yeah. Wow. So profound. Thank you so much for sharing that. Your dream story is just, it was really, really touching. It's just amazing how each person that reverts to Islam has their unique calling, their unique connection to Allah. And this is what's brought me to create this page, because I believe that even with a Muslim who's left Islam in their own way and come back as their own story as well. So I really appreciate this so much. It's amazing story. So
well, I mean, it's one of those things that it does feel a little weird, because I talk to other reverts and I asked them, like, how long did you study Islam before reverting? And they were like, oh, 6 months. And I'm like, and they were like, how long? And I was like, 16 years.
Wow.
But hey, when my Muslim friends would give me dawah, I'd argue about how no, the idea of God is illogical. Like, there's no way that a loving God would allow evil. Why would God allow me to be abused by such a monster of a father? Or the fact that I grew up in poverty. But I would always end our conversations. I'd say, well, Achi, if I believed in God, if I wasn't a Satanist, I'd be a Muslim.
Yeah. Wow.
And look what happened.
SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. Yeah. You just paused for a moment.
Subhanallah. Huh?
You've just paused for a moment
Yeah,
there.
you paused too.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but I didn't say anything. I was waiting for you to say something.
Yeah. So with in regards to, I mean, dawah is given in different ways. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm listening.
Pause, but it's good. Okay, great. There you are. So in regards to dawah, I think with dawah, it's people see as dawah as something that goes, you're going into people's face and this is the religion, this is the right one. But dawah as in, I believe dawah, and it's different for everybody. Dawah is through actions, as a Muslim, but
Yeah, I believe dawah, like people translate dawah as evangelization.
Yeah.
For one thing, that's not what it literally means. It means invitation in Arabic.
That's right.
But people have this idea that dawah means evangelization in the same way of like Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons going door to door. Have you heard the great word of? But for me, the way I do dawah is I let people see what I'm doing.
Mm.
I let people watch me doing me, especially people that have known me and being like, wow, Drew is like, look how chill he is now. Look how laid back he is now. Look how upright he is now.
Yeah. So it's all in the actions, isn't it? And the way you are.
Yeah, I think that the best dawah is, and I'm not dissing brothers and sisters who like have like little stands with bronze. I'm not missing that. That has its place. But I feel that dawah where you are showing what a Muslim looks like is the most powerful of dawah.
Yeah.
That's where the true barakah comes.
Yeah. Wise words. That's right. Yeah. And in anybody meeting you, has there anybody that's gone, oh, wow, this religion seems interesting, and they're sort of, you've opened the door for them somehow? Has that happened at all in this 3 years' time?
People are, it seems like at one point the Q&A sessions get a little exhausting. Especially if you're at a house party and you're the only guy wearing a kufi and you're drinking a Red Bull instead of a rum and Coke, and they're like, "Hey, I remember you from that black metal show 5 years ago. Weren't you the guy that got in a fight with the lead singer?" And I'll be like, "Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah." But yes, absolutely. And I've had two friends I have been able to get two friends to take their shahada. And it wasn't through debate, it wasn't through evangelization. It was just a matter of, they were like, "Hey, Abdullah, we've been noticing like how chill you are now. Like, can I ask you some questions?" And question led to question, led to question, led to question, led to, "Can I borrow some literature? Can I borrow some literature? What are some websites?" And then next thing you know, "Hey, Abdullah, can I go to the masjid with you?" And I'm like,
SubhanAllah.
"Mashallah." So, yeah, that's the story. The only thing that I would say gets exhausting, and I'm sure every revert feels that way, but it's important. It's an important part of dawah. So I'm just like, "Allah, give me patience. Give me patience." So why did you revert?
Yeah.
Sometimes I do clean. Sometimes among more conservative brothers and sisters, I do tidy up my story a bit. I'll say that I converted from atheism, which is sort of true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't want to scare people off. Like, an auntie or an uncle may not be, an auntie or an uncle may not be ready to hear I was a Satanist.
Yeah.
But I'm not exactly lying.
That's right.
But yeah, it does get tiring. It does get tiring having to tell the same story over and over again. But at the same time, I understand its importance,
Yeah.
and I understand that it does touch the lives, and it's gotten. I've had people who. I've had brothers and sisters who were considering leaving Islam, and then they meet me and they hear my story and they're like, okay, if you're sticking around, I can stick around.
SubhanAllah. That is amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And this
Yeah,
is the,
so I've never pulled back any ex-Muslims back into Islam, but people who were considering leaving Islam, I've brought I've been able to pull them back from the edge. Alhamdulillah. So at least I can say that on the last day. Inshallah.
inshallah, inshallah. Yes. And this is really, part of the purpose of this page is, to bring people back to to their deen, really, more than it is to convert anybody. This page wasn't created to to bring in anybody from from another religion into it, but more to inspire, and to light up the hearts into Iman. And if it helps anybody who who is considering entering the deen, inshallah, the rewards will be with you, inshallah. So yeah, yeah,
Inshallah, yeah.
yeah,
Isn't it? I think if I recall, there's a hadith that says that if you are able to get someone to embrace Islam, their salah and their good deeds are brought onto you on the last day.
yes, subhanallah. Yes, Allah's very generous in that way, isn't he? Alhamdulillah.
And that's another great thing about Islam is people do not realize how easy it is for, two of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Ar-Rahim,
And
the
Allah,
beneficent, the merciful, Ar-Rahim. And how easy it is for sins to be forgiven, for how easy it is to get good deeds on your record on the last day. It's a religion that it's a deen of ease. Our deen is a deen of ease.
yeah, yeah, that's right. That's beautifully said. It is. It is. It really is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Is there any messages that you'd like to send out to anybody?
Well, first of all, thank you so much to, first off, to the Muslims. Thank you so much for welcoming me into Islam. I want to give a shout out to all of my friends in Atlanta, like especially Kelly Wentworth in Atlanta with the Atlanta Unity Mosque. And I want to give a shout out to all of my friends at the Islamic Center NYU, especially Imam Khalid Latif and Sheikh Suhaib Webb. for their guidance and their help. I want to give a shout out to Sheikh Faria Al-Jarrahi and Sheikh Abdul Rashid Al-Mukashfi, who were two Sufi sheikhs that I learned a lot under while I was in New York, when I would go to their zikrs and I would go to their khutbas. MashaAllah, may Allah guide them and protect them at all times. And then to the Satanists out there, first off, salam and hail. But all I just want to say is learn about Islam, give it a test run, kick it with some Muslim homies, read about Sufi. I'm serious, kick it with some Muslim homies. Read about Sufism. Read the Quran. Read a good translation of the Quran, like the Sahih International version. Visit a masjid and see how people react during Ramadan. Go to an iftar and see why a guy like me, who was like you, is down with this stuff right now.
Yeah.
And then one other thing is to my fellow Satanists is that you will be amazed that Satanism ostensibly claims to be a religion of self-confidence, of self-cultivation, of standing up for yourself. And I just want to say that Islam can give you all that and more without clouding yourself with your nafs, with your ego. The ego is not the way to self-esteem. It's not the way to self-confidence. It's not the way to having a backbone. You think it is, but that's an illusion.
Yeah. No. Thank you so much, Abdullah. Thank you.
Shukran akhti.
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Well, it is 9:30 here in Xi'an, and it's 11:30 in Australia, so it's getting late for us. But I'm so honored that you decided to bring me on. I hope that our conversation reaches a lot of Muslims and non-Muslims, and let's get Revert to success rolling.
Inshallah. The honor is all mine. Your time is highly appreciated. Thank you so much. And yes, inshallah, it helps many people.
All right.
Well,
may Allah protect you, sister. May He be with you at all times, and may He grant you success in this wonderful new endeavor. And may we be among those who on the last day are in Jannah.
Ameen.
Inshallah.
Ameen.
All right. Ma'a salama. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah wa barakatuh.